Living every day in your head for free. You can tap away, but I will not hear you scream. You can break your keys, spread your toxicity, your world outside reality. In your room, a little hideaway, but you let it through. Enough to go insane. Living in the dark hasn't treated you well. You're building your own prison cell. Hey, wait, don't waste it on me. Spite, life's telling you, don't waste it on me. Did I brush you off? Is it your lack of friends? We never met, even if you pretend. Am I in your debt? I don't owe you nothing. Don't say something you'll regret. Hey, wait, don't waste it on me. Spite, life's telling you, don't waste it on me. Hate, rage, don't waste it on me. Spite, life's telling you, don't waste it on me. Wait, don't waste it on me. Spite, life's telling you, don't waste it. I'm telling you, don't waste it. Life's telling you, don't waste it on me.
Hello gamers from around the world, this is Boxenberger, the video game enthusiast from Germany, and I would like to welcome you to a brand new looking world of gaming. So we've done a complete redesign of our overlays. The other one did us well for almost 100 episodes, but it was time to give the world of gaming a fresh new, brand new look. So let us know in the chat, guys. What do you think? How you like it? And we would love to hear some feedback there. But Dutch, first, we need to welcome, of course, this awesome community. The chat is already filling up with a lot of familiar names. A big welcome to you guys. And of course, a big welcome to everyone who listens after the fact, either here on YouTube or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you're listening. Welcome. To this week's world of gaming and co-streaming again.
Yes, and welcome to the midweek mix-up as well. And shout out to all of our awesome community here as well. So because the news is relatively thin on the ground and we don't like overdoing it with multiple podcasts in 1 week, for the foreseeable, whilst we're both uber busy in real life as well as podcasting and streaming and things, we're going to be just doing co-streams on Thursdays for both shows until things settle down, become a little bit busier in the gaming side of things as well as quieter in real life. And then we'll return back to Wednesdays, Thursdays when we've got more to cover. But yes, welcome everybody. Welcome.
Yes. So Dutch, how are you doing this week, man?
I'm doing well. Much like you, I am uber busy with work, super tired. But the moments I've had to relax, I've been enjoying downtime. Been playing the only game that I've been waiting for, which is Rebirth, and we'll talk about that soon.
Yeah.
And I've also been back into building models again. So I got the B-17F Memphis Belle Flying Fortress Ravel model, which is a Master 5 level model kit. So I've been doing that. That's been taking up the hours that I haven't been streaming, and I've been enjoying that.
Sounds fantastic, man. Sounds fantastic. So yeah, guys, we're gonna have a packed show this week because yesterday, midweek mix-up, so we have a lot of extra topics in this show.
Yes.
And of course, we will cover the entire Xbox partner preview. A lot of great games have been shown. I actually quite enjoyed it. We will talk, of course, about a couple of other updates on bigger games. The Dragon Age updates are out. We have previews for Dragon's Dogma. We will talk, of course, about No Rest for the Wicked. So a lot of game talk this week. But we will also cover, of course, the current state of AAA games, because I want to use the opportunity of Warner Brothers, courtesy to those guys, to discuss with you the state of that. And we have a lot of other news. So it's going to be an awesome show. But first, of course, we want to start by letting the community know. You guys can still vote in the chat what gameplay we're gonna watch today.
I was talking to Boxy about this. I was talking to Boxy about this before we started. I haven't had the opportunity to record anything because I'm streaming the game that I'm going to play. So my community are going to watch a stream of me playing the game in the background because I haven't had a chance to record anything. So you will get to see Final Fantasy Rebirth as the gameplay, but it will be one of my previous streams. But at least it's something on the stream to watch whilst we're talking and chatting away.
Exactly. And here on the World of Gaming, you guys can, as always, vote. It's a head-to-head race here in the chat in between Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Stalker, Heart of Chernobyl. So, but we have also Banishers as an option, or Prince of Persia. So I'll leave the poll up for a bit, and then I would love to hear from everyone in the chat what you guys have been playing in Dutch. I know what kept you busy. So let us know your thoughts on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Yeah, it's. I think everybody that yourself, myself, and everybody that's played it so far has said one very simple thing. And if people loved Final Fantasy VII Remake, then Final Fantasy VII Rebirth just betters it in every category.
Yeah.
Visually beautiful. The open world is done very well. The combat system's now been expanded, so you have synergy attacks, you have a multitude of different things you can do. You've got a party system where you've got to build the party relationship up. You've got your own intertwining relationships with each character to whether or not they're happy or unhappy and so on and so forth. And the more side quests you do with them, the happier they are, and you learn more moves. So that all intermingles. You've got an item creator that you carry around with you. So when you're picking up items from the world and different bits of loot and things, you can create bangles and accessories. That obviously the rarer the items that you find, the rarer the items you can create. I love the party menu system now that they've got, where you put on the menu and all your characters are lined up. I think that looks much better, a lot more modern now as well.
It does look better, but it is also a lot slower.
Yes.
You press the button and it takes till it's loaded up, and then all the animations. But yeah, it looks like a lot nicer and a lot more. Yeah.
And overall, the story's been great. The new changes to the story are very obvious for people who know the story very well from 7. There's a lot of change to the story in this one. A lot of change to the story. Far more significant.
See, I played the original.
Yeah.
But it's like at least 20. It was 20 years ago or so, at least. The last time I played the OG. Final Fantasy VII. So I don't remember the story all too well, but you can tell that they extended the story with many things, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the way, because in the original Final Fantasy, especially when you meet Yuffie, you don't meet her in the same way that you meet her in this game. She doesn't have that much of a part in this in this as in the original as she does now. In the original, it's kind of a chance happening. You don't have to actually get Yuffie in your party at all, and you can actually miss getting Yuffie in your party entirely on the original game. Like, she isn't a huge character, whereas they've integrated Yuffie quite in depth in Rebirth, and of course Intermission in Remake, to a point where she's almost an integral character to the story now, and she adds a lot to it, because of her past with Wu Tai and things like that. So that's been a nice addition. Whether or not people like the character, having further on in the game, without spoiling story, you get to use her more as a main character for sections, and she's quite overpowered. She's got some really overpowered attacks, where you can kind of synchronize weapon magic types to the weapon itself. So obviously, if your enemy's weakness is fire, you can set your weapon type to fire and just go at it and start doing heavy damage. So she's very OP, which is good. But just brings another enhancement to it entirely. Overall, just absolutely loving the game so far. The exploration's done right. Even the card game, I didn't want to get into the card game, but I've got the hang of it now, and I'm enjoying it when I do play the card game. So no, I literally can't say much bad about it so far. To be fair, I'm really enjoying it. I'm playing it in quality mode. I refuse to play any games in a dumbed down, smudgy version where the graphical fidelity is really hampered down just to fit in 60 frames. Until we're in a position as a gaming platform to offer visuals at 60 frames, I will always stick to quality mode because I cannot play it. This is like twice now, Boxy, where you've just said no, like, I want to play performance, but these are just like smudgy and blurry, and I just can't do it.
Yeah, it happens unfortunately more often these days than I want to. It was Final Fantasy 16, it's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth now, it was Avatar, it was like, I love 16. If I have the option, I usually choose 60, but the resolution sacrifice in Final Fantasy is just too much.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't mind if they would reduce, like, I don't know, level of detail, the particle effects or something like that. I wouldn't care. I would rather play it at 60 then. But this game, it really hurts when you look at it on a 4K screen, and it just looks so blurry in performance mode.
And it's not just us either. It's not just us. Like, from what I've seen on Twitter as well, the vast majority of people that would usually go for performance regardless have went, nah, I just can't do it. I think Ace has changed onto 30 frames mode. I think he put a little joke status on earlier saying he's getting used to it now. Neil Gage Spark as well, he's exactly the same. He's changed it to quality mode, and he's just like, he's having to play through it that way. But
you know which game did quality mode like perfectly was Banishers. That's how you do a quality mode.
Yeah,
there's barely any noticeable change in resolution. They have a fantastic upscaling technology. The internal render is at 1440, and then fantastic upscaling. It looks super sharp. There's barely anything you notice, like some minor artifacts or things, but like, if you go back and forth in between quality and performance mode in Banishers, it's really, really hard to tell from the image quality which is which, and that's how you do it, man. That's how you do it. But yeah, I do agree with you on Final Fantasy. I'm really enjoying it. It's there's just something magical about Final Fantasy VII. The first remake had that. Such a fantastical world. This mixture of magic and modern technology, and the way how they present the story. Great pacing. You get a lot of action sequences, and then it calms down again with the little story parts in between, and awesome epic set pieces, beautiful art style. And I do agree that the gameplay, it's just improved on basically every level. I already really enjoyed Final Fantasy VII Remake, but Rebirth, just almost better in everything, in every way. So
You know what I do like as
yeah.
well about Rebirth, and a lot of people probably didn't notice it, but those who did, it stuck out like a sore thumb. When you were in Midgar in Remake, they used essentially what was a giant blown up JPEG as the background. And especially when you got high up on some of the towers, you could tell it was just a literal still image with a couple of like GIFs on the top to make it look like there was some smoke coming from a flat image. It looked horrendous.
They have a couple of things. They did the exact same thing in Final Fantasy 16, where, for instance, they render enemies in the distance at like 10 frames per second.
Yeah.
Only when you get close, they are rendered at 30 or same frame rate, yeah, and things like that. But yeah, overall, like, it's a beautiful game. Vistas are great. They use a lot of great color choices in the artistical way how they build the world, and yeah, and it's a fantastic game. It's a fantastic game.
Yeah, but that's the one thing I liked about Rebirth, though, because Rebirth does not do that. They don't use flat images. Like, the world that you can see goes off into the distance, because obviously it's an open world, so it's done differently, which I'm thankful for, because it doesn't detract from the near ground visual spectacle, because everything in the near ground looks great, and then when it's just a literal JPEG as the background, it looks like really out of place. So thank God they've gone away from that. But yes, go on. We've got some member stuff, some super chats to get through. So
absolutely. So let me shout out H Julia for sending in a super member chat, for being a member for 1 month now. And I asked the question, of course, to the chat, what are they playing? And she answered Elden Ring.
Nice.
See, a lot of people go back to that.
Yeah, they're getting themselves used to it again before the DLC comes out.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been thinking about it too, but I'll do that a little closer. To the launch.
I've got
before we go through what the rest of the community have been playing, let us catch up really quick on the members.
Yes.
You got a few?
Yes. I've got Dave Ramos for 14 months. He says, currently at Vikings Season 4, Episode 13. Thank you for the recommendation. No problemo. If anybody hasn't seen the Vikings series, watch it. It is brilliant.
It is.
Next up, Studos, 24 months, and a host of emojis. Thank you, Studos. Fanto, sir, also member for 24 months. Thank you, sir. And then Dave Ramos with a $2 super chat. He says, largest technical leap. RIP 30 frames per second. Long live 30 frames per second.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting next with how they advertise next gen, because they promised us 60 this gen. This was the thing that they advertised, both of them, PlayStation and Sony. It was like, okay, now we finally have 60. And whilst we had that in the very beginning of the gen, where we had all those cross-gen games, it was like basically, the major difference in between the last gen and the current gen console version was like the option of a performance mode.
Yeah.
And now that we have like current gen only games, we're going back to 30 again. It's like,
the thing is that the the problem we've got is I think a lot of these games aren't focusing on optimizing the 60 frames mode. What they're doing is they're cramming in a performance mode as opposed to making that performance mode worthwhile. They're just going, yeah, it hits 60, but they don't care about how good it looks. They're just like, whatever. You've got a performance mode. I hope you're happy. It's like, no, not particularly, because if I'm going to play performance mode, I want it to actually look good enough to be able to still see what I'm doing and not be like turned off by the game. I'd rather it still look good to play.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily need to be that bad that you have to revert to 30 frames. But unfortunately, there's been a number of games that are just not optimized on performance mode visually. And they've just went down to the route of, let's just reduce the resolution to an absolute bare minimum so we can get 30.
Yeah.
It's just not good enough. I think like I said before, when we get to a stage where the visuals aren't dramatically hampered on performance, then I'll be sticking to quality mode on the vast majority of these games.
Yeah. I mean, we could fill probably an entire show about why they are not using upscaling technologies more.
Yeah.
Like, yes, FSR isn't really the same like DLSS, but it is still a pretty mighty tool. I recently checked out the FSR 3 update on Starfield on PC, actually on the Rock Ally, and it is phenomenal, bro. Like FSR 3 in Starfield.
Is that been brought to consoles yet as well? Or just PC?
No, it's not. It's just PC. Like basically every game. There's like 2 games out there that use FSR 3 and only a handful that used FSR 2. It's really weird. And one of those is actually RoboCop. They launched the FSR 3 update this week, but for some reason it really doesn't work on console. The frame generation is turned off, which is basically the big leap is not in the actual upscaling from FSR 2 to FSR 3, but it is that they have this frame generation technology. And when it works on PC, it is actually really, really good. Yes, it's not DLSS 3. I hear you guys, but for those systems without a NVIDIA card, like the Rock Ally, it's phenomenal. Starfield gave me on average like 10 to 15 more frames. Like I'm running now on the Ally Starfield at medium settings. I have almost everything on medium except shadow quality, which I put to low.
Yeah.
So basically medium settings, and I run that game on the Ally at 1080p at above 60 constantly now. Like, and in docked mode.
Yeah.
But like, I really don't understand why more developers are not using it on consoles.
Yeah.
I simply don't get it. But we could fill the entire show with that.
Yeah.
Let us talk about. So I'm gonna close the poll in the chat. So a lot of people voted for Stalker 2. Sweet. So we're gonna watch Stalker 2 first. I have to change the gameplay real quick because I thought you guys are going to vote for Final Fantasy 16.
See, and my guys, as I mentioned before, you're watching a live stream of me playing Final Fantasy Rebirth because I haven't had a chance to record anything. So you'll see me twice on the screen here, but you'll just have to bear with it.
Yeah, that's you're a beautiful guy to look at. So it's. Let us see what the community has been playing. So H. Julia already said Elden Ring, which is awesome. Dave Ramos picked up his Sea of Stars save file. Kay Asante apparently also plays Final Fantasy 7, and he's enjoying Bellatro, the card game, you know. Then what else do we have? Where are we? I lost the chat. Damn it. Sorry. Can you really quickly catch up because my chat is acting weird and I can't find the messages. So
yes, certainly. So where were we up to previously?
What the community has been playing.
Yeah, who were you up to?
So Konstantin, I got it now.
Oh, you
I'm
got
back.
it. Yeah, good.
There. Konstantinos Pascal, the Greco, is playing Mega Man 2. He's got all the collections now in the Steam sale, and it's nice, man. I've been thinking about getting those as well. They would be perfect for the alley. Yeah, Jacob Novik has been playing Dead Island 2, Dying Light 2, and Battle Island, and more. Yeah, man, I've been thinking about going back to Dying Light 2. They just put out a huge free update. Yeah, you got proper guns now and everything in there. I'm tempted, man. I'm tempted. So Dutch, have you been playing anything else other than Final Fantasy VII? All right, then
I wish I
need
had
to
the
talk
time.
about two.
I wish I had the time.
Yeah, because unfortunately we had to skip last week's podcast on short notice. So I actually finished last week Banishers just in time for the Final Fantasy VII release, and man, that is like honestly a contender for Game of the Year. Banishers was fan freaking tastic. If you like games in the vein of Tomb Raider, A Blake's Tale meets God of War, something along those lines, Banishers is absolutely for you guys. That's I was just surprised. I didn't have this game on my radar. I heard great things. I got it, and I'm so glad I bought it. And it's worth every cent. Fantastic story, like beautiful visuals. The combat feels clunky at first, but you kind of get used to it and get the hang of it. But the writing in this game, like, absolutely outstanding. Like, every side quest I did is freaking amazing, like, meaningful, deep. You have to make a lot of tough decisions in this game, a lot of really tough decisions. So I really enjoyed that. I really did enjoy that. And then just earlier today, over my lunch break, actually, I booted up Stalker because, yeah, that was a surprise drop yesterday during the Xbox Partner Program. So I got the Stalker, the original Stalker trilogy. You can get it for 40 euros. I don't know how much it is in the UK, the entire trilogy, but
33,
yeah,
33.30 or something.
Okay. So yeah, they put the entire trilogy on there, and I only played for about an hour. That's about that's why I have to change the gameplay after 1 hour into the podcast, because I only played it for an hour. So you're really watching me play this. Let me put it this way, man. It's the first time this game comes to console. It's like a true PC game. It has been for almost 20 years or 18 years now since it's out, and I haven't played it actually since it came out. I played it back in the days on PC.
Yeah.
I remembered it. I loved it. I've talked about this in the show. I love the Stalker series. I was a little surprised. I don't want to say it didn't age well, but I don't know how to phrase it better. You can really tell with a couple of things, like the shooting feels super outdated. Like the world, it's actually still pretty beautiful. I mean, you can see it on screen. It runs at 4K 60, beautiful. Of course, you can tell it's a little dated, but the graphics hold up actually for an 18-year-old game. Yeah, it's 18 years old, 2000 or 17 years, 17 years old. It holds up really well on the visual side, but especially the shooting feels off. Like, I don't know whether that comes from it being older or it being now a console port. But yeah, that's, you have to get used to that. Let me put it this way. Other than that, I'm really glad that they put those out there, because I feel like a lot of console gamers have missed out on a great series. The game is really good. It's tough as hell, like you will see me die a lot here in the gameplay, and yeah, you can. It's either me because I suck, or it's really tough, and I didn't remember it that hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great that it's out there, and I thought like I have to support GSC Game World anyway. So I bought the trilogy, and yeah, man, that's basically what I've been playing. So
Nice.
let me see in the chat. We have a couple of others. The Epirist says he's playing Dead Island 2. Yeah, I have yet to play that. I've yet to play Dead Island 2. But Dutch, let us talk about some news. I already touched or started to talk a little bit about the Xbox Partner Program that aired yesterday. One of the big surprises is Stalker 2. Let us start with that, since we are on the subject anyway. Not Stalker 2. I mean the Stalker trilogy, of course. Yeah, of course. That, what do you think, man? Surprise drop out now.
Yeah,
it's out also, by the way, on PlayStation.
It is. Yeah, it is. It's on all platforms.
Yeah.
There's a weird. I want to say that one thing that is really weird on PlayStation. The trilogy is 20. On Xbox, it's 33.
That's weird.
That's very weird. I don't know what that's all about. Whether it's incorrectly priced on one platform or the other. It doesn't make much sense either on Xbox, because you can buy each individual game for £10, or the trilogy for 33, which is more than if you bought them separately.
Yeah.
So something's
no, but it's not. I heard that apparently it is this way in the UK. Here in Germany, it's not. You can buy them individually.
Yeah.
For 20, or the entire trilogy for 40. So.
So just the UK then. Very strange. But no, it's nice to see them coming to consoles for the first time. It's, as I've mentioned, when people were asking, okay, so what is Stalker all about? So it's if Metro was very difficult.
Yeah.
If Metro was very difficult and you had more meaningful choices to make, that's essentially the Stalker.
I would go a little. I mean, especially the first two Metros were pretty much very linear corridor shooter kind of games.
Yeah.
And that's not Stalker. It has like survival elements. Yeah, you have to find food and stuff. You have semi-open world. Back in the days, it wasn't really super open world, but it like open areas. Yeah. You have side quests and everything. So, but yeah, the setting is very similar. Very similar.
Yeah. So, but no, other than that, it's great to see them come to console for people who want to see what they're about before they jump into Stalker 2 when that releases this year. I'll probably get the most recent of the trilogy and play through that, as that'll be the closest to being the most should we say less clunky feeling. Just to get used to playing the game again before Stalker 2 comes out.
Probably. I have only checked out the first one because that's the best. Heart of Chernobyl absolutely is the best. Wasn't the third one the one that played? Was basically the prequel? I can't really remember whether the second or the third one was the prequel.
Yeah.
But yeah. Maybe I do that as well, because I won't be able, simply for time reasons, to play through all three.
Yeah.
Then I just start the three. Yeah, I have to think about that, man. I have to think about it. It's not a bad idea. Not a bad idea.
Yeah, the least clunky of them all. might hold up just a smidge better before we play Stalker 2. But I'll do that. I'll not be getting the whole trilogy. I've got the original games on PC. So I'll pick up the more recent one closer to the time, play that a little bit and jump back into it. But for those who've never played it before, it's definitely worthwhile checking it out to see what Stalker's all about and just how difficult the game is, because it isn't a walk in the park. It is very difficult. Like you say, it is survival mechanics, but it's also, as you've seen, just dying immediately. It can be very rough as well. So, but no, it is. It's good to see it come out on all platforms so everybody can see what it's about.
Absolutely.
I think it's a sign of also of things to come for Stalker 2 in terms of its position. I think at launch, of course, naturally it's going onto Xbox. But I've got no doubt in the future, whether it be a year or longer, it will end up on PlayStation 5 as well. It's obviously they're not going to put all of the original trilogy onto all platforms and then not bring them the new one to all platforms inevitably in the future. So I think that's a sign of things to come as well on that front. But I'm glad it is people are getting to experience more of it, because it's like you mentioned, it's a very old game. So a lot of people haven't played this before, haven't tried it.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. So, Dutch, what did you think about the Xbox Partner Program as a whole?
Yeah,
Besides Stalker 2.
I got a chance to watch it whilst just chilling out yesterday, as opposed to doing anything. So I was sitting back and sort of streaming it or co-streaming it or watching it like that way before. I'm just chilling it on the TV. So it was nice just to see all the trailers, just as a normal viewer for a change. And it was good. Yeah, it was good. It's good that they do these things separately. The reason I like them doing this partner showcase separately is it means when it comes around to big showcase time in June, the focus is primarily on first party and huge third party partnerships, as opposed to
I agree.
As opposed to all of these other smaller partner announcements. But there was some good game announcements in there. Capcom's new one actually looks different than what I was expecting in a good way. When we first saw that game announced, it was something entirely different, and that was only last year. It looked entirely different, but this looks more like almost like a top-down Diablo-esque approach on the Capcom game, but also still in certain sections third-party kind of action adventure, as it were. So it looks very intriguing. That was the one that stood out to me, and that one's going to Gamepass day one as well, so that's even better. But overall, no, it's a good show. I like these partner previews because it's things that inevitably most people will be able to play on all platforms.
Yeah. I truly do appreciate that Xbox is now doing what we have been asking them for years, as the community, to do smaller shows in between the big showcases. And we just had earlier this year, obviously, the Developer Direct. Then we have now the partner preview, and it's only 3 months from now that we get the big June showcase. So it's fantastic. And like you said, the partner preview is exactly what it is. Like they show third-party games, highlight those to make simply more space for first party in the big June showcase, which is fantastic. So I like the format. It's like trailer, and no talking and no other bullshit. So I really did enjoy it. So what were some of your highlights? Let's talk about some of the games, man.
Yeah, like I say, my main highlight was predominantly the new Capcom game. I think that looked fantastic. Of course, it was great to see. The Stalker. My memory in terms of what I saw, because I've had such a busy day, I'm gonna have to bring it up. But my memory in terms of the game names is horrific, so I'm gonna have to have a look.
I have a list here right in front of me.
That will help.
They started the show with Awakening, which reminded me a lot of like Assassin's Creed, but then it was the combat was a lot more fast-paced. Really dig the vibes of that. And a Happy Cloud Gamer in the chat says he loves more the AA games these days versus the AAA games, and I feel like a lot of those AA games were shown there because obviously if you have some sort of like marketing deal for a huge AAA game, you're still gonna put that in the big showcase. And I think almost everything, maybe outside of Final Fantasy 14 or so, you could consider AA that they have shown. So yeah, I dig that. There was one game. It was actually the second one that I really thought looked super interesting. Is Slate of Hands.
Yes.
It's like it reminded. I got Batman Arkham vibes, but instead of being Batman, you're a witch.
Yeah.
And you throw around cards.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not batarangs.
Yeah.
But what did you think of that?
Yeah, that looked great. That looked great. That's another Game Pass edition as well. And no, that looked.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Ah, nice.
Yeah. So I've got the list up now, so I can see them as well. So
yeah.
no, that did look fantastic. There was a few on there actually that did look great. And a few that are going into Game Pass that we didn't expect to go into Game Pass. So that's nice to see.
Yeah.
But no, Sleight of Hand looks really good. I'm looking forward to seeing how that pans out. It's been one that the developer said on Twitter has been in production for a while. I haven't had a chance to speak about it. So that was their grand unveiling as well.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see the partner preview is showing off new games as well for people as opposed to ones that we've just seen before.
Yeah. And you know what I really enjoyed? That they did it again, like the in last year's partner preview, where they put in like the little QR codes that take you then to Xbox Wire, where you have a little bit more in-depth explanation of the game or developer interviews and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's really a great thing. Then they showed Altars, which is like, I don't really know what it is. It's like a base building meets survival kind of game.
But all of them are your alter ego, so it's you.
Yeah.
But in many different variants of you, because of some weird time-space slippage. So you're constantly coming across new versions of you from different times and different universes, and you've got to, because of the planet that you're on, you've got to keep moving and base building and surviving, and it's an intriguing concept. This weird circular habitable vehicle that you've got to roll around this planet on and stay away from the sun because it gets too hot to live on.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Certainly interesting. And it's
like an interesting concept.
Yeah.
But I need to see more. I wasn't really sold by what I've seen. It looked beautiful from a visual point of view.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure.
That's also Game Pass as well.
Yes, it is. Then they showed Creatures of Ava. Which was like a cell shaded game. Like
yeah, you know what it is? I thought this just looks like whatever Wild probably once started as.
Exactly my thoughts. And then I got like little Pokemon vibes meets like a riddle game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where you're playing that flute player and basically catch different kind of animals that then start to follow around. And I don't know. Didn't look really like my type of game.
Yeah.
To be honest. Then they showed Griefville gets a Chucky edition.
Yeah.
Multiplayer horror kind of game.
That's another one of these metaverse things, because that's a Roblox game called Griefville with Chucky. So it's a weird another meta universe thing, a bit like what Fortnite have been doing recently, adding in different game modes and new things. So I think that's Roblox are trying to compete against Fortnite in this meta universe. It's a game within a game within a game scenario.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. People are going to have fun on it. Again, it's a silly multiplayer addition to it that people are going to love. So yeah, nice little addition.
I wonder whether it will get a proper player base though.
Yeah.
It's with these kind of games. It's not every of those games are like a Helldivers.
Yeah.
And yes, I take the L because before Helldivers came out, I said like I don't expect that game to find a huge player base, and probably the servers will be empty a few weeks after launch. And I was wrong. I'm happy to admit that I was wrong because a lot of people are enjoying that, and I'm always up for that. But
Hopefully it
yeah, then
remains.
they've
If it remains that way for Helldivers, then I'll pick it up. But I'm still waiting to see how they deal with plus 1 month, plus 6 months, so on. And we'll see how they cope, see what content they add. They're just about to add a big addition with mech suits and things like that into Helldivers. New creatures and new things like that. So that's going to be interesting. Weather, procedural weather, which kind of destroys things. So
I gotta admit they supported it so far with meaningful updates. Right after launch, it looks like they are off for a great start. Did you see, by the way, since we are on the subject of Helldivers, this week some journalist posted that they've been acquired, and then the studio head came in from Arrowhead, came out, and was like, "Did I miss something?"
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Common trend at the moment. People saying things that are just simply not true for clicks. But it's great to see that this is the problem as well. I think when you're a smaller studio like Arrowhead, you can come out and say, no, this isn't true. But when you are like a lot of Xbox's titles at the moment and Xbox studios, you hear it every day, all year. So you're not going to spend all of your time on Twitter saying this isn't true, this isn't true, this isn't true, this isn't true. Just a waste of time. So you just don't say anything and you just let rumors run ragged. This is what I keep saying about the Xbox rumory stuff as well, is they simply don't have the time with the sheer volume of rumors that people make up about them all the time.
Yeah.
It's simply not time-wise. You would have to have a whole new PR team just to combat rumors in order to keep on top of everything, and it's just not worth it. So it's obviously frustrating for people that hate listening to rumors and seeing all the dodgy stuff going on Twitter all the time, but ultimately it's also just not practical to have to constantly fight away stuff all the time, or have an update every 2 minutes on YouTube, or a statement every 2 seconds to shut stuff down. So appreciate that this studio's come out and said that like it isn't true. Like I don't know why you're spreading these rumors, but I'm glad they did.
Absolutely. They've shown Sinking City too.
Yes, which
is
changed.
A horror game, which looks, and it looks phenomenal, honestly.
Yeah.
Like very creepy, just like you want it to be in a horror game. But I'm really digging the vibe. That and it has phenomenal graphics, man.
Yeah.
It looks fantastic. Final Fantasy XIV has been shown off.
Getting its official release date.
March 21st now.
Yep.
Not for me.
No, I played it for an hour on stream.
The beta.
Yeah, I played it for an hour on stream, and I was just like, this is just and then I seen some comment underneath by like a lifelong Final Fantasy 14 player. And I'm like, it gets good after 60 hours. I'm like, 60 hours? 60? Nope.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Sorry. I don't care. I literally don't care. If this game doesn't respect my time in the opening 3 hours on an MMO, then it's just an absolute no-go. And it
goes for every game. I give like, if a game doesn't grab me within its first 2 hours, I'm out.
Yeah.
Like, there's literally too much out there that I do enjoy. And if a game isn't for me, and I have the feeling it doesn't value my time, I'm out.
Yeah.
There's
It might
plenty
have
of options out there.
it might have the most fantastic story in the world, but if that story doesn't actually start until 60 hours in, it makes no
Yeah.
difference to me. And ultimately, when I was playing it, it did not feel at all like a Final Fantasy game in the slightest.
Mm.
I appreciate it's meant to be their version of an MMO, but it had no feeling of Final Fantasy. It just didn't feel anything related to it. It just felt like a world that
Yeah.
happened to have the name Final Fantasy.
And it kind of sucks because we have been very vocal about us wanting more Square games
Yeah.
on Xbox. And now they're putting out a game on Xbox, and it's the one game I'm not interested in.
Yeah.
And simply because I don't find the time anymore to play like MMOs.
I would
Many years
recommend.
ago,
I would recommend as a Final Fantasy game though on Xbox. Try Crisis Core. You can pick it up dirt cheap. Dirt cheap. It's a good Final Fantasy VII game. It's the prequel to the original, which has been remade in order to go beside remake. It is a good game, but 14. Thankfully, it is doing well. It's high up in the charts at the moment. However, let's see what happens when people have to start paying for subscriptions, whether or not it continues to do well. But this is just ultimately 14 is just not for me. It's not my game.
see, many years ago I was big into MMOs. Yeah, way back in the days I played a lot of World of Warcraft and tons of other MMOs along the way. But ever since I became a father, about 8 years ago, I stopped playing MMOs. They are great. I get it. They are awesome, but they are such huge time sinks, and that's why Final Fantasy 14 simply isn't for me. I so was hoping that they bring like Final Fantasy 7 remake or any or 16 or like those Final Fantasies that I really do enjoy on the console on Xbox. But yeah, they're not. So all right, what else was in the partner program? We talked already about Stalker. That was the next one. Then they had Monster Jam,
Yes.
the monster truck game in there.
Yeah.
Persona 3 Reload. The
Yeah.
expansion pass was in there.
Which is also
Not a big-
the expansion to the game is also in Game Pass, which is Microsoft really putting down the money for these Persona games because it's not often you get the DLC as part of Game Pass as well. So the fact that they've went out and got the DLC as part of Game Pass for Persona 3 Reload is another statement from Microsoft there. So hats off to them.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of people seem to enjoy the Persona games. I'm
Yeah.
just absolutely no fan of the art style. Like, it's so off-putting to me that, yes, there might be a great game underneath, but nah, I'm not gonna watch that kind of art style for 100 hours or so. Then actually they showed one game that I thought looked awesome, and it was Berserker of Kazan.
Yes, cell shaded Souls game.
Heck, see, when I watched the show, I've seen the game for the first time.
Yeah.
Didn't have it on my radar, and it was like awesome. Hack and slash, cell shaded, brutal, gory combat, like awesome. And then a lot of people said online it's like a Souls game. I didn't get Souls vibes from it, but apparently it is.
Yep. I mean, it looks great though. I like the fact that they've changed it up a bit and they've went cell shaded. Well, this mixture of cell shading and regular, which has worked well. The characters are all cell shaded, which is really nice, but the scenery and the environment and everything isn't cell shaded. And it's a good contrast. It works well. Looks nice.
Yeah. It looks fantastic, definitely. Then they had I don't know how to pronounce that. ZAU? Zau?
Tales of Kanzira Zao. Yeah.
Looks like it's a game for me.
Yes.
Like, I love those platformers, Metroidvania kind of games. It looks fantastic, man.
Yeah. Yeah, shout out that indie developer is super active on Twitter. He's super hyped about everybody playing. The demo is on Steam, so if you want to try the demo, it's there. I think the demo's on Xbox as well. But no, that game looks fantastic. Graphically, it looks almost on par with Ori.
Yeah.
In terms of visual styling, the platforming, the combat looks really good. It looks absolutely fantastic, and I hope that game does well. It's very well priced as well. It's only like $20 for the full game, if not less. So I'll be picking that up as well. And I think I might do, because Indie Showcase is dropping very close to when that releases. So I think I'll give away a couple of copies of that on the Indie Showcase. So.
Oh, nice. By the way, do we have a fixed date already on the Indie Showcase this year?
It's likely going to be the last weekend in April, which would be, and I can tell you now, that will be the 27th, which will be the Saturday. 27th of April.
Guys, book that in. As you know, the Community Indie Showcase by WandrinDutch here is the best indie showcase out there. How long is it going to be this year?
2 hours.
Around 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I can't wait, man. I'm really looking forward to it. But we're gonna promote that properly.
Yes.
Do some ad banners here and stuff like that. When we're a little closer.
Yes.
Then we got Frostpunk 2.
Yes.
You know, city building game. I don't know. Not for me. What did you think?
Yeah, exactly the same. It's not for me. It's going into Gamepass, so if anybody wants to play a city builder, you'll be able to play it at no additional cost in Gamepass. But it's not for me. The next game was for me. The next game was absolutely on my radar.
Let us know.
Yeah, so that one is Kunitsu Gami, Path of the Goddess. It's Capcom's new game.
Yes.
And that looks fantastic. That looks very intriguing.
It does look interesting. It's got this mixture of like base building meets RTS meets something else. Third person action game. It does. Man, Capcom is on fire these days.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they're doing very well. There is a lot of these publishers getting back to their best now, and Capcom's one of them. Capcom's really going hard and putting out some really great games recently. I think the only others that have been pretty much on par as well has been the guys who published Berserk, the one that you've just played. Sorry, Banishers. They're the only other publisher that's been on par with what Capcom's been doing. I'm trying. Why can't I think of the name of the Banishers publisher? What are they called again?
Focus Home.
Yes, is it Focus Home Interactive? It is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Focus Home.
Because they've just been consistently putting out great games for like years now.
You can tell like this is a publisher, and I have to give them kudos for that. It's a publisher that wants to like grow in this industry. They were like this publisher a couple of years ago that put out a lot of quirky games, super small indies that have weird vibes. They've invested a lot in their studios and their partners, and over the last 2-3 years, almost all their games that they publish have like this AAA touch almost.
Yeah.
Like if you think about a game like a Blake's Tale, would y- I don't even know whether I would consider that a double A or triple A
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
anymore, you
It's kind of
know.
in between the two, isn't it?
Yeah. Then what else they had, like I'm blanking on the name right now. Evil West.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like felt like a super polished AAA game, man. And then you look at something like Banishers,
Yeah.
which seriously um, is for me a game of the year contender. It's phenomenal. It's you can't really tell anymore from a visual, from a production quality, and those studios are still pretty small, and somehow Focus manages them well. They put out consistent quality games, and they really want to grow in this industry. And
They've
I'm
also
happy
had
about.
Bolt Gun, Warhammer Bolt
Yeah,
Gun,
right.
fantastic. Atomic Heart was a great game. Atlas Fallen, Aliens Dark Descent, which actually
Atlas
people
Fallen,
really
yeah.
loved. Plague Tale Requiem, of course. Evil West. Let's have a look here. Insurgency Sandstorm was actually a really good shooter.
I haven't played that yet. Yeah.
Yeah, it's on Game Pass as well, isn't it? Dordogne, which was, of course, the indie game that came out. In fact, they've got about 25 different versions. They've got about 25 different Warhammer things. Warhammer Hired Gun, Stormground.
Yeah, well.
They've got Curse of the Dead Gods, another really fantastic indie game. And they've got an absolute abundance of games coming out as well that are fantastic. The Surge 2, Vampire, Greedfall 2.
Oh yeah, Greedfall, man. Have you seen the latest trailer of Greedfall 2, by the way?
Yeah. Yeah, looks absolutely fantastic.
So good.
Yeah, and there's that other game that's coming out this year, and I had it in my showcase a couple of times. With the woman with the axe, and she's got that pet flying mystical dog.
Flintlock,
Siege of Dawn is another one.
yeah.
And that looked absolutely fantastic as well. They're like literally knocking it out of the park. So Capcom is literally in line with them right now for publishers that are just absolutely nailing it with every release that they've got. So
Yeah.
long may it continue. We need more publishers like both of them.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, where were we? Partner program. I think that's it.
It is. That was the last one. Yeah.
It was.
And that was on
That
Game
was the
Pass
last
as well.
one. Yeah. Man, so summary. What do you think?
Yeah, really, really great show. Really great show. Again, you go into it with the full expectation that it's third party. It's anywhere between indie and AA. You're not going to be much higher than that or higher than that. And it is games that you'll be able to play over the next year. And yeah, it is what it says on the tin. I think the messaging's right on this one. Like as you say, they don't do all of the talking. They just let the games show off. They put the little QR code on the bottom. If you want to learn more about them, you can learn more about them. So yeah, it's a fantastic way that they've done it, and I hope to continue to do it.
Agreed. I can't add anything to that, so I would suggest we just move on to the next topic, man. Ghost of Tsushima is out on PC now.
Yes, it is. Yes, it
It
is.
seems like a couple of people have problems with that.
Yeah, standard. Standard.
So what do you think, man?
Yeah, I mean it's you know what it is. It's we've been saying it for ages anyway. It makes absolutely no sense as to why they wouldn't release their games day and date on PC. It does. It's proven time and time again. It does not detract from the console audience at all. If it performs on console, it'll perform on PC, and they can work into sync because they've got different audiences. The people who actually play any of these games on PC have high-end rigs, and like playing these games maxed out, and they will wait for them. the people that play the game on consoles will buy it on consoles regardless, and a lot of us double dip. So it doesn't detract. The player base only improves. Sales only improve because of it. There isn't really a losing situation here. More people get to play the game. It's still not on your competitor's platform, and you're going to make a load more money. So, and you're going to be playing it in the definitive version. I'm sorry, PlayStation guys, but it is what it is. We at Xbox, the Xbox fans, know this. If the game goes onto PC, it is definitely going to be the best version of the game.
Yeah.
It just is what it is, because there is more powerful hardware there with more options in order to either super sample it or upscale it or add ray tracing that you simply can't do properly on consoles or at all, or have high performance or higher graphical settings. All these are very, very well achievable on PC because they have the options to do that. So you're going to get the definitive version of the game on PC. At some point, they will have day and date, I think, but there is no losing option on this. It's a great game. It's going on to PC with everything, all of the expansions and things. And you're going to be able to play a very beautiful game, including using all of the haptic feedback stuff on the DualSense controller. So they're still putting the DualSense options in there, so it gives a reason to have a PlayStation product connected to your PC. So they're still trying to sell you something, even though it's not directly on PlayStation. They're still saying, oh yeah, but we've included the haptic stuff from the DualSense controller for your DualSense. So you can still buy a DualSense controller and make the most out of those features. So they're still selling a physical product, despite not having the console, as it were, to themselves.
Yeah. I mean, listen, so I was surprised that people are surprised about this move. It was expected. The game has been out for what now, 3 years?
Was it 2020 when it released, or?
It was close to the launch of the PS5. It still came out on PS4. So yeah, 3-4 years now, and it's long overdue that it makes its jump to PC, and people need to get used to Sony putting more games out on PC. And I've said it on the show, and I stand by it. I would be surprised that if the next PlayStation first party game comes out and it doesn't come day and date. With everything that the new Sony PlayStation has been saying in recent weeks, about them not following the smart business decisions and everything. Doesn't matter what kind of game it is. The next PlayStation first-party IP is coming day and day to PC. I would place a bet on that, honestly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether it's the next Naughty Dog game or Insomniac game or whatever the next one will be, because we still don't know what comes next. It's coming day and date, and people need to get used to that. That's just the times we live in now, and yeah, Xbox fans have been doing that for 8-9 years now. So let us move on. One last statement, because I see our friends KSante and Sergeant Sentinel and everyone else discussing that. It's like that Ghost of Tsushima is a phenomenal game, and I can absolutely agree. It is from start to finish, fantastic story. It has great combat system. It's an incredible visual art style, very unique art style. I did truly enjoy Ghost of Tsushima. So yeah, Dutch Dragon's Dogma. There's a little discourse around it because previews are out. They had like a play event, and a bunch of journalists and influencers went there and played a couple of hours of Dragon's Dogma, and all the previews are through and through awesome. It looks like Dragon's Dogma is exactly what fans have been hoping for. Everyone says it's a fantastic RPG. They improved upon everything. It looks great. It feels great. It's a great world building, great RPG system, great everything. Like through and through positive previews. But it does have 30 FPS on console. No
Yep.
performance mode at all.
Yep.
So here we go again. And people are discussing that. So what were your thoughts when you saw the previews of Dragon's Dogma and, of course, the 30 FPS discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this in one of the DMs the other day as well. I think one of the issues with these analysis videos as well is that they focus on, a lot of the time they focus on things that are, if you zoom in X times, then you can really see. And if you slow down to this, and if you watch this graph, what it doesn't really dictate is how the game feels. And the only way you can really tell how the game feels is if you play the game. Judging by the previews, those who played it on either PlayStation 5 or on PC have said the game is super smooth. It plays really great. And they played 4 hours of it. They didn't notice anything there. On console, on Xbox specifically, in terms of the 30 frames, you've got VRR support. So, again, that'll also mitigate a lot of the issues that you have if there's any hitching or frame drops or anything. But ultimately, even on PlayStation 5, the game felt smooth and felt good at 30. And that's really what matters. Now, of course, people want performance modes. But again, they always come at a cost. And this is the thing on consoles. Until the consoles are in a position, as we mentioned before with Final Fantasy, are in a position to offer performance mode where the graphical fidelity isn't hampered down to a smudge, then you're going to continue to have this issue where games are coming out at 30 frames and optimized for 30 because they simply look better to play. Whereas the 60 frames modes that are coming out in abundance often detract that severely from the visual aspect, that you feel like there's no option other than to play at 30 because visually it's really either blurry or significantly downgraded. So even if you want to play at 60, the issue is that it just doesn't look great to do so. So you're feeling you have to play at 30. So until consoles come to a point where the visuals aren't significantly hampered by performance modes, I think this is just going to be commonplace.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to argue against that. However, I still feel like on both consoles, PlayStation and Xbox, we've been let down a little because, again, I said it earlier in the show, I feel like all this talk around, we have the most powerful console and biggest sleep, and now we have state of the art consoles and everything. They sold these consoles with the promise of 60 FPS now on console, and it's clearly not.
Yeah.
There's barely any major release these days that does support a proper 60 FPS mode. Like I said earlier, Banishers did it really well, super well. Many games don't even have the option anymore. They directly put out at 30, and if there is a performance mode available, like in Final Fantasy 16, 7 Rebirth, I mean, nobody's using it because then the resolution drops are simply too big, and the trade-off is too big, and that kind of sucks because I don't see really the reason why. I get that if you put out a trailer, you will use quality mode. You wanna, because it's like yeah, 60 FPS. You have to feel that. It's about feeling. You can't really bring that over in a trailer, and you want the trailer to look as shiny as possible. But yeah, it's and we also already mentioned that earlier. There are technologies out there that would help a lot. FSR 2 or 3. Hell, even use Intel's XESS, which is also a great option out there, and it's hardware agnostic. You can use it on console. There's no reason not to use it. But if you want to stick with AMD's FSR2 or 3 solutions, they are great. They are not as good as DLSS, yes, but they are great, and nobody's using it on console. It's like barely any games out there do use the technology. And to me, it's more like developers have completely shifted away their focus from console. It's PC, what they are focusing on. I get it. It's the bigger platform overall.
Yeah.
Yeah. But and on PC, of course, the range of hardware is even bigger because a lot of people don't have those super high-end PC Master Race 4090 builds.
Nope.
It's not. If you look at the yearly Steam Steam, what do you call that? Stats. What people are actually using. Yeah, a lot of people still play on 1070s or so barely on 2070s, and let alone 30 or 40 series. Most people don't use that, and so it makes sense to use technologies like FSR, like DLSS, like Intel's XESS. On PC, you have a huge install base, you have a huge variety of different hardware configurations. There's still a big install base on consoles. If you accumulate over PS4, over PS5 and the Xbox Series consoles, the console player base is still there, and I don't have the feeling that developers are focusing on that anymore. Because other than that is like, yeah, I can't find a proper explanation. It's why they're not using the tools available, why they're not trying to leverage the power that is in the consoles. And I know the consoles are already outdated, but come on. If a crappy PC, and honestly, a lot of games run better on my Alley than they do on the consoles these days. Yeah, I mentioned Starfield earlier.
Yeah.
Like, why? Yeah, the Series X is definitely more powerful than the ROG Ally. Yeah, so I don't get it. I really don't get it, and I can't find another explanation than simply developers not caring about consoles anymore. And of course, I see our friends here flexing their muscles. Luke Steele with his 4090 and Keasante, who rocks a 4090. In between the price point, obviously, of console and a 4090, it also has to do a lot with convenience. Yeah? Like,
yeah.
PC gaming simply isn't convenient, and there's nothing anyone can claim that will convince me otherwise, because I have a gaming PC and I have the Alley, and I know it is simply not as convenient to play on a PC than it is on console, and that's why I prefer console gaming, even though I have a more powerful PC. I don't have the 4090 though, but still, better PC than console. And if I have the option, I usually choose console.
Yeah.
Simply for convenience reasons. And I would love to play at 60, because that's how they sold the consoles to us, and we're not getting it anymore. And we got it at the beginning of the generation. With all the cross-gen games, they all had a good performance mode, and for a year now, since we have these current-gen only games, we're back to 30 again, and I don't like it. I really don't. But we were actually on the subject of Dragon's Dogma.
Yes.
And the previews, they look phenomenal. I watched a couple of videos as well. The combat, man, in that game looks absolutely awesome. It's kind of hard to tell, but I said a couple of weeks or months ago on the podcast that I have the feeling that Dragon's Dogma could be that kind of, surprise hit that takes the gaming world by storm. We had that last year with Hogwarts Legacy, and the year before with Elden Ring. And I kind of feel like that this year it could be Dragon's Dogma that steals, like, the mind share of the gaming community, because it is. And by the way, if you're interested in Dragon's Dogma 1, you can get that right now super cheap. It's like, I think, $3 or so on Xbox, in the Xbox store. Because I owned the original on Steam, and I saw that the other day on Xbox, and thought, like, for $3, I'm gonna add that to my library. So if you want to see what Dragon's Dogma is all about, and prepare yourself for Dragon's Dogma 2, can definitely recommend that.
Yeah.
You're gonna pick that up?
No, I'm just going to go straight for Dragon's Dogma 2 as opposed to the previous one.
Yeah, I meant Dragon's Dogma 2, but you're going to pick it up.
I'll get the second one, yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
But I have said, though, it's the failure or success of my thoughts on that game are on your shoulders. So if I hate that game, I'm blaming you.
That's fair. That's fair. But I'll take the blame. But I know you're gonna sit here. You're gonna sit here in what now? 3 weeks, and you're gonna thank me for talking you into getting Dragon's Dogma.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see about that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. All right. Dutch, Warner Brothers announced this week that they do not want to focus anymore on the classic AAA games, the one and dones games. They want to focus more on free-to-play and live service games. And they come off of a year where they released a single-player game that was turned out to be the best-selling game of the year with Hogwarts Legacy last year.
Yeah.
And they just released a live service game that, even though it was, I really enjoyed Suicide Squad, it wasn't a success.
Yeah.
They said, they just 2 weeks ago, they came out and said, well, it didn't sell the numbers we expected. We see a big drop off in the player base and everything. And again, I didn't think it was a bad game or anything. On the contrary, I really enjoyed the story of Suicide Squad. Even if you're not interested in the live service aspect of the game and the end game of, you still get your money's worth. You get a great campaign that takes you 15 to 20 hours to finish.
Yeah.
And it's a great game. However, it didn't do well. Yeah, obviously it didn't do well, or not as well as they hoped it to be. And on the other side, they had the one and done that they don't want to focus on anymore. That was the best-selling game of the year. So, yeah, you can argue about that strategy and how that will turn out for them all day long. But obviously, we see something happening in the industry with AAA games.
Yeah.
More developers are questioning, well, are these AAA games, the single-player games, is that still a sustainable business? We've seen Xbox bringing games to PlayStation. We've seen Embracer shutting down studios left and right. Gonna talk about that Gearbox thing in a bit, but yeah, obviously something is happening in the industry, and Warner Brothers is just another one. EA shut down the Mandalorian game, probably doesn't have to do with AAA though, more than with Disney and what they want for the Star Wars IP. But anyway, you get my point.
Yeah.
What do you think, man, about the Warner Brothers thing and where the industry is heading with AAA gaming?
Yeah, I mean, Warner Brothers is just more. They've had more misses than hits though recently, which is part of their issue. But
Yeah,
ultimately, Hogwarts proved that if you build a great game, people will buy it.
yeah,
That is the bottom line of AAA gaming. As long as you build a great game that justifies the expenditure and people love it, people will buy it. It doesn't mean you have to price it beyond expectations. I think a lot of the issue is they're not pricing games right. People are like, it doesn't matter if it's a 20-hour game, if it's $70. No, stop it. Like, this is an issue that we've got here. I'm not saying you have to charge more for huge, like 100+ hour, 300-hour games, whatever you create. But ultimately, not every game needs to be 70, 80 hours to be classed as a AAA. Not every AAA game needs to be priced at 70, 80 bucks. You can still have a AAA game and price it lower in order to sell more. Ultimately, you'll make more on it over as a headroom if more people pick it up than you would do if less people pick it up, but at the higher price point. So I think they've just got to start balancing out how they price some of these games. Some games might be priced higher, but not all games have to be priced at 70. And we've seen recently
yeah,
some of the more successful games have been the ones that have priced lower. Whether they be AA or AAA, whether it be Alan Wake, priced at 40 bucks, and that didn't sell. It didn't sell great compared to what the industry would say, but according to Remedy, it's their best-selling game ever.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're super happy, and that was priced at 40 bucks. And then you go over to Helldivers, and that was priced at less than
50
40.
here in Europe.
Yeah, that was priced at like 40 for Helldivers or less. I think 35 or something like that for the standard version, and that one's doing fantastic. And then there's numerous amounts that can show you that the pricing model ultimately really does dictate, in some circumstances, how successful a game can be. Because some people just simply will not buy in at the higher price point and they'll wait. And it's got nothing to do about being broke, like a lot of these weird man children like to say. But ultimately, you've got to pocket watch for yourself. And if you don't see value in something at a set price, or you're unsure as to whether or not to invest in a game that you haven't yet played, are you going to spend 70, 80 bucks on a game and you're unsure whether or not you like it? And then when you go for trading, you don't get your full price back. You get like 20, 30 bucks off what you bought it for. So you've lost money and you haven't got a game to play. So there is things that people weigh up these days, especially when you're looking at recessions, etc., as to why. And obviously those same issues are affecting studios, affecting budgets and things like that. So the budgets are going higher in order to cover costs because people are on higher salaries or so on and so forth. And that's having a knock-on effect. But when it comes to games of any sort, the ultimate bottom line is, as long as you build a great game, people will buy it.
Yeah.
Because it's all down to word of mouth. If that game is unbelievably successful, Hogwarts was successful not only because of the IP, or the media storm that followed it because of a certain subsection of our community, which we won't get into, but because of word of mouth, because it was absolutely everywhere, because everyone was playing it, and everybody who had played it loved it, it was the most successful game of last year by a country mile. So it should be. It was a fantastic game, and from a studio that had historically not put out big games or anything substantial. They'd done like little Disney kart games and things like that, like nothing great, nothing mind blowing. And then they come along with essentially the game of the year and the highest selling game of all of last year, even beating Zelda, which is something in itself. So
See,
build great games and they will sell. Well, ultimately, the problem is these guys want to invest less and see quicker returns. They also
yeah,
want continuous returns as opposed to one-off. So they
yeah,
want games as service games. They want games with additions in, so people are continuously buying things or continuously investing in a game, because
yeah,
then they at least have got a continuous loop of money. But the problem you've got there then is that these companies focus just on that one thing and forget that you can do both. You can have a live service approach, but still put out great single player games. You don't have to do one or the other. And when you've got a buffer that the live service provides that is bringing in recurring revenue, it makes it a lot easier to be able to produce these AAA single player games, because you've got that monthly income that's still backing up the rest of them anyway.
yeah.
So you have to do both. To solely go down onto only live service, like Warner Brothers are suggesting, live service and mobile, which are identical, by the way, because mobile games are essentially live service. Microtransaction fest,
Almost
terrible.
everyone,
Yeah.
everything. Yeah,
Um. So to only go down that route is far riskier, because there is such a greater scale of failure compared to success than there is on
mm,
regular AAA. You can put out a AAA game or even a AA game, and you can have moderate success. It might not hit the same targets you want, but it can be profitable. But with a
yeah.
live service game, you can launch that game and within a week it's gone. Like,
Yeah.
nobody playing it, nobody
See,
investing in it,
see,
it's ruined.
Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, what happened to Suicide Squad? And see, the thing is, you touched upon a lot of great points there. From a publisher or developer perspective, obviously, the costs of making games, AAA games especially, went up significantly. We've seen some numbers like the last Spider-Man game. Yeah, it cost $300 million to make, not including marketing budget.
Yeah.
And obviously,
I want to touch on
from a
that quickly
business,
before you continue. I think Ubisoft came out as well. Was it Ubisoft? Or was it EA?
what do
Who
you want
came out
getting
recently
at?
and said they're going to stop doing licensing agreements for big things and just focus on their own IP.
EA,
It's EA, isn't it?
EA,
And that's
EA.
part of the
That's why
reason
they,
why. That's part of the reason why, because the
yeah.
Spider-Man is a prime example of why that game cost so much to make, because a large chunk of that was simply for the IP.
Depends. I'm not sure. I don't quote me on this, but I have in my head that almost every licensing deal works not on you pay a certain amount of money to get the IP, but you have to pay a certain amount of revenue you generate with the IP.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if the 300 million already include the cut for Disney, but with EA they came out literally and said, yeah, well, it's too expensive. We've heard that Disney, I think it was close to 30% of the generated revenue in order to get the license, and that's why they canceled the Mandalorian
Yeah.
game. Because if you add that, of course, to a $300 million budget, yeah, and then if you sell your game at $70 and $20 of those have to go to every or to the license or IP holder, that's obviously going to cut deeply into your profit.
Yeah.
But that's more a licensing issue, I think, with licensed IPs. But my point is, of course, it costs a lot of money to make AAA games. We've gotten used to in AAA games to have shiny graphics, to have like super high detailed mocaps, to have lifelike animations, to have phenomenal textures that are taken with photogrammetry, and we are used to all that now. And that is, of course, the reason why it takes not 3 years anymore to make a game, but 5, 6, 7, in the Xbox case, sometimes 8 years. Yeah, by the time Fable comes out, it probably will be at least 8 years. It's 7 years this year. They're working on Fable, and of course, a lot of the money you just have to spend in game development is simply salary. It makes a huge difference if you have to pay the salary for 3 or 5 or 6 or 7 years. It's obviously. So, from a business point of view, of course, live service games sound so cool. You know, you put out the game, you have a small team supporting it afterwards that generate new levels, new content, and then you have this continuous stream of revenue that is generated. And people look at super successful games like a Minecraft, like a Fortnite, like a Warzone, like a PUBG, that are out there as free-to-play titles, and generate a shitload of money. I've been saying it for so long. If you think about it, the games as a service space is saturated in an incredible way, because how many live service games are you going to play?
Yeah.
Everyone has their live service go-to game, and whether it's Fortnite or something else. But you're not invested in like 5 different games as a service titles over years. Yeah. And that's why it is so hard to get into that market. And there's barely a live service game that withstands the test of time. Like, if you think about it, almost every live service game that came out in recent years more or less instantly died and wasn't a success. And it really didn't matter that much whether it's a good or bad game. Again, the Suicide Squad is actually a great game, but it's dead already.
Well, everybody remembers when that Amazon game New World came out.
Yeah,
it was like everybody was playing it, everybody was talking about it. Now no one mentions it. Yeah,
it had its moment of fame, and it come and went. Look at Anthem. Look at it's just a general problem. But of course, developers are looking at this, and publishers look at this, and what's the sustainable model? It comes down to what you said. Just make a great game. And it can be a single-player game. It can be a multiplayer game. Not every multiplayer game has to be a live service game, by the way.
Yeah.
We kind of... I really don't get why a lot of publishers just are not making classic multiplayer games anymore. Like, if you think back, it was like, you look at Battlefield. It came out, and then 3 months after launch, you get the first map pack that you pay for. But it's not like a live service game. Like, you just have these constant add-ons in terms of map packs and whatnot, and be done with it, and keep your multiplayer game alive until the next install of that IP comes out. And we kind of lost that. And if you think about the most successful games of the last year, for instance, they were almost all single-player games, not live service games. What were the best-selling games last year? It was obviously Hogwarts, it was Star Wars, it was Call of Duty. Yes, okay, gotta give you that. But you get my point.
Like, Microsoft have been the only ones that have had continued success in creating live service games.
Yes, they do. And
but
none of those games were like AAA live service games.
Yeah.
If you look at State of Decay 2, you look at Grounded, if you look at Sea of Thieves, none of those games kind of launched with that AAA vibe. You can argue that Sea of Thieves is now like in that AAA space, but Definitely not when it came out.
No.
Absolutely not. And
No.
look at Grounded, passion project done by 12 developers or
What I would like to say though is an issue a lot of these companies don't seem to realize is Microsoft were willing to sit through the failures in order to uncover a diamond, whereas a lot of these companies aren't willing to sit through the failure in order to craft out a diamond, and that is what live service is about. You're gonna have a rough launch. It's not gonna be perfect straight away. You've got to sit through it. You've got to invest in it. You have to make it great. You have to add content consistently, and you will create a diamond if you continue to do it correctly. But these studios are not willing to put in the legwork in order to make a live service sustainable and successful. They're willing to craft it in the first place and get it launched, but that's not when live service games actually need to be successful. And this is why I mentioned Helldivers. Helldivers has had an astonishing launch. It's had a really great opening month. But let's see how it is in 6 months. That's when you know if this game is for real as a live service.
But that Thanos in the chat brings up a great point. That game didn't start as a live service game. It's not a live service game just yet. It's a multiplayer game. Period. Yeah. They probably gonna add some sort of monetization in later. But literally, the CEO came out and said you have to earn. You have to earn the right to monetize the game.
And the Sea of Thieves did the same thing, because Sea of Thieves didn't monetize immediately either.
Yeah.
Sea of Thieves started out with just base content, base missions, etc., and then added more missions to it, and then crafted this game, and then said, right, okay, now we're going to start selling ship sets and costumes. And that's when they started doing it, but not immediately. Immediately, it was just an open world pirate game with very little to do.
Yeah. And so did, by the way, State of Decay or Grounded.
Yeah.
Yeah, none of those had those monetization options in at launch. And yeah, AAA games, I see the point of the industry. Yeah, they're getting more and more expensive. Development times are through the roof these days with 6, 7, 8 years of development time.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's where you should focus on. Cut down the development time. Because I, again, look at a game like Banishers, which is not even close to having a AAA budget or massive team behind it.
You know, Boxy, me personally, I'm not too fussed. Like, don't get us wrong, I enjoy our big AAA games like The Witcher and Rebirth and all of these fantastic stories and Cyberpunk and things like that. I love them. However, I would be just as happy with the quality AA games we've been getting, like you've mentioned, the Banishers and and those kind of games, because for the price point and for the game you're getting and the stories they tell and the gameplay that you're getting from them, they're absolutely fantastic. And ultimately, I think the industry needs to stop worrying about live service so much and focus on crafting more AA space games. Some smaller, more narrative-driven, littler games that are smaller on price point. Craft more of those, as opposed to worrying too much about the big AAA all the time. I'm not saying ditch AAA altogether, but there is room for them to improve on the AA scene. Microsoft have been really great on indie, like the indie space, and the AAA space-ish, but not so much the AA in the middle space. And I think Sony's the same, not so much in the AA, but really great at the AAA.
Yeah. And that's definitely true. There's a lot of great potential of having success with AA games. Look at Pal World or even Helldivers. I don't think that Helldivers would be considered like your classic AAA game. There's room for success there. But if you want to grow your business and improve your profit margin and so on, live service, free-to-play live service is probably not the way to go.
Nope.
I would rather focus on cutting down development time and cutting down those huge budgets. Still make quality games, but
Another thing as well, though, that goes in with that.
AAA shine
Yeah,
to it.
the
But
AAA games don't need to be 100 hours long. Like, for starters,
they
you might
don't.
have a story to tell, but I think me, you, and others would rather see, if it's a big story, then turn that into 3 AA games or 3 smaller AAA games. If it's a really long story, instead of making one super long game that like drags its arse out and no one ends up actually completing it, or very few people actually end up completing it, and you don't sell as many copies, then if you're putting out, for instance, a 20-hour game or a 25-hour AAA game, and the vast majority of people end up completing it because they have the time to do that, then you end up going to see more people interested in returning for a second game than you are if you put out a 100-hour game or a 200-hour game that nobody ended up getting into because it was too long.
Yeah. So, and that's exactly my point. I know the allure of getting a constant cash flow, because making a game for 5, 6, 7 years is expensive.
Yeah.
And you don't generate any money. So all the money you need to develop a game, you have to borrow that.
Yeah.
You have to go to a bank, you have to go to investors, you have to go somewhere and get the money to finance a development time like that. And in the worst case, your game flops. You know what I mean? Then you generate all the revenue basically within the first 2 months or so. Because that's also something we learned, that most games sell like 80% of their units within the first 2 months or so, or 6 weeks even. And from a financing standpoint, that's obviously an issue. But to optimize your revenue, again, PlayStation's gonna do that now. They're gonna go day and date to PC, so basically enlarge your player base, your customer base. That's one option to do. And the other one is basically to simply try to optimize your development times. I mean, listen, I'm super excited for Hellblade 2, which comes out in what now, 2 months. But if you look at that game is, what did they say, 8 hours long? Even if it's, you end up taking 10 hours because you do a lot of the riddles and collectibles and stuff.
Yeah.
It's a short game, and it took them 7 years to make.
Yeah.
Like, yes, and I know it's a very ambitious game. They focus on super shiny graphics.
You can essentially take out a year of that the dev time for COVID, like, because they were essentially stopped and halted straight for that. But even still, like you say,
you get my point. Rather than investing in live service aspects, which I simply don't see much success out of that. If you look at, and we look at the industry closely, these games as a service titles that came out in recent years, like, can you think of one that came out in the last 2 years that was successful?
What, live service titles?
Yeah. I can't think of one from the top of my head that came out in the last 2 years that was actually successful.
No, and the vast majority have been ones that have been out for a while.
Exactly. And that proves my point that I originally tried to make. It's like that market is saturated because you don't play. You might, listen, I play 40 to 50 games a year. Yeah. I know people out there play a lot more games, but I actually try to finish my games. And I end up finishing something in between 40 to 50 games. So I play a lot of games, but I don't play a lot of live service games. I have the one that's called Age. And everything else, which, by the way, I wouldn't even consider like a real games as a service title, because it's not like you have like an in-game store with microtransactions and shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, you invest a lot of money in Fortnite. You're gonna stick with Fortnite. You're not gonna move over to Warzone and invest another shitload of money there. You know, it's not like you are playing like a ton of games as a service titles. But you do that with single player games. Yeah, you finish them, you move on, you play the next one. Yeah. Finished Spanishes last week, now playing Final Fantasy, and then move on to Dragon's Dogma. That's how I roll, you know? And so at the end of the day, I don't know if the developers and publishers, they probably have better data than we do, because we just have gut feelings, you know?
Yeah.
We don't have hard data about the possible success of games as a service title, but you can tell that Sony tried to focus now. Oh, we're bringing out 10 games as a service titles in the next 2 years. And now they delayed half of those to 26 and beyond. And the other half is basically canceled. So it's not easy to get into live service. If you do make it a successful one, yes, it's cool. The risk, I feel, to put a lot of money into developing such a game is far higher than trying to focus to get a good AA to AAA game in the single player or classic multiplayer space out. Because if you do that, you can have a huge success. Again, the most successful games of the last year, if you look in the top 10, like 9 out of the top 10 best-selling games were single player games. So there's really no point in arguing, yeah, you can't be successful with multiplayer, with single player games, you know?
Yep. I agree. I've got a super chat here from Dave for $10. Thanks, Dave. So if game is going to change, is there room for a smaller AAA experience for less, i.e. 50 to 60 AAA for 10 to 20 hours instead of 70 to $80, or AAA for 10 to 40 hours, or AAA for 20 to 40 hours? Could also be a path towards shorter dev cycles. Yeah, I think we kind of touched on that one as well. I think it doesn't need to be a super long game, and because of some of these games being so huge, they are taking extremely long to create, like a long time, and that's because of how long these games are. And naturally, if you're just creating these more condensed but equally as powerful AAA experiences that are shorter, 10 to 20 hour experiences, theoretically, that is also a route for shorter dev cycles. Now, it depends on the developer and whether or not they're perfectionists, like your Naughty Dogs, for instance, who just want a game to be perfect before releasing it. And naturally, of course, even then, you're going to have people complain about story elements and things, but to a graphical standpoint, they want the game to look as good as it can be and play as good as it can be and add all the bells and whistles that they can fit into it. But yeah, there is always room for maneuver in these things where they can say, listen, we can create a really good 10, 20, 25 hour game, and it's going to take 4 years instead of 7. And this is the kind of pitch we're going for. And those are the risks I'd like to see on the AAA cycle, instead of let's create the biggest thing we can possibly find, where we've in recent times had an issue with, because every other big AAA game that seems to be releasing in recent history seems to go for how big can we make this game? How long can we make this game? This game is 100 hours. Like, some of them even use it as one of their things.
That's the Ubisoft problem. It's a Ubisoft problem, for instance. Like, if you look at the latest Assassin's Creed, and even though I super enjoyed Valhalla, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it. I'm a sucker for the open world Assassin's Creed games, but they are so huge, and it takes you 70, 80 to 100 hours to finish the main story, and you have barely touched upon any side stuff. And is that really necessary? Don't get me wrong, if a game is really, really good, and you have a huge open world like The Witcher, like a Starfield.
Well, the thing about The Witcher
Um,
and Starfield is they don't intentionally have filler content in there, whereas
yeah,
an issue with some games is that there is a lot of fluff, and even The Last of Us 2 had this issue near the end. Like the vast majority of people who
yeah.
finished Last of Us 2 said that could have been 10 hours shorter.
Hmm.
It could have been because there's a lot of the games suffer from how can we put more into this. Stop focusing on how you can add more and just make sure that the core of the content is perfect. If you think something can substantially benefit the game by putting it in, and if you're going to put side quests in, make them meaningful. Otherwise, don't put it in for the sake of putting it in.
Like Banishers,
Yeah.
every single
And that's
quest was
ultimately what they
meaningful.
need to do. They need to get away from putting this filler content in where if they feel they need to buff out a
Yeah,
game.
absolutely. I did totally agree. And yeah, uh, so listen, if I think back to the 360 days, we had the development cycle of around about 3 years,
Yeah.
right? Even for huge games like Skyrim, like Fallout, yeah, 3-4 years. Yeah, we had Mass Effect every 3 years. Bam, there you go, gigantic games. I don't feel like I'm with you in this day and age. Of course, we have a lot of bloated games, but I don't feel like games have become that much huger. But again, back in the time, they created huge games in a significantly shorter time frame,
Yeah.
and I wonder why. Because yes, we have better graphics. Yes, we have better mocap. Yes, we have um, better textures now, and so on.
Do you think it's partly to do with the
But
studio
we also have
sizes
better
being
tools,
significantly larger these days?
probably.
As we've
Probably.
mentioned, a lot of smaller studios as well have said the reason we're sticking to the size that we are and not growing is because we feel like it would severely hamper the decision making process.
Yeah, I feel like that is probably the case because listen, I don't work in software development, but I'm an engineer and obviously have a profession in that. And I used to work in a super small company, and now right now I'm working in a gigantic corporation with 280,000 employees worldwide. You know, and a lot of the things we do now take so much longer because you have that corporate structure, because you have that overhead. You have to like
Everything has to be
sign off on
justified. Yeah.
everything. You have to justify if you want to buy a pencil. Yeah, you have to go to 3 managers and let
Yeah.
it sign off. And
It's true though. It's true. Like even in my
yeah, it
job, it's
is.
exactly the same. You need to speak to him, and who needs to speak to him, who needs to speak to him, and needs to speak to him.
Yeah,
And ultimately, in these smaller studios, the benefit is that the decision maker, the main go-to guy, is the boss,
yeah,
and he's literally the guy that's also running the team, but also running the studio. And you saw that
yeah.
with Double Fine. And the reason Double Fine were able to
True
put out a
that.
game relatively quickly in comparison to the previous one was because there wasn't convolution. You just had, if you watched the Double Fine documentary, which was fantastic by the way, you saw the day-to-day running, and they were all hands on deck, like all the way
Yeah,
through, all hands on deck, all the way, and it showed you all the way up until their acquisition from Microsoft. But that's how it should be. And if there's like they'll have a meeting as the whole team in a thing, and they'll okay, so what about this character and what about this character and da da da. Let's change it a little bit of this, and that was the decision
yeah.
making process. That was it. All in the same room, all at the
I
same
agree.
time. The problem
Yeah,
with big 400 staff studios or 300 staff studios is you have to tell your manager who has to then go to another guy, and then he has to go to the animator over here, and he has to go to this
mhm.
guy, and he has to go to this guy, and then the studio goes, nah, I don't like that, and then it comes down, and then comes down, and then comes down.
Yeah, exactly. And that is definitely one thing. And the other thing I can think of, because I see that also in my company is the work from home situation. Like, yes, we always talked about, okay, the pandemic took a huge cut off. But what changed with the pandemic? We started to work from home, and
Yeah.
a lot of people still work a lot from home. Like, I work 4 out of 5 days right now in the office, but most of my team still only come in maybe once a week. And there's nothing in this world that anyone can tell me we are not as efficient anymore.
Yeah.
We simply are not.
Nope.
And if you ask people, everyone will tell you, oh, I can do my job just as good from home as I can do it in the office. But somehow we are not as efficient anymore.
Yeah.
And it is, and I see that a lot of also in our software teams. I'm not part of a software team. I'm part of a hardware team, but we have software teams in our organization, and work very close with them. And especially in that part, a lot of people tell me all the time, well, I can do my job even better from home. I'm not distracted or whatnot. And I just see it. We are not as efficient anymore. And I don't know whether that's also true for the game development, but I'm just assuming here. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And that's why you see a couple of companies already.
Oh, you
Telling
seen the
people, "Oh,
post, the post from Rockstar about Rockstar asking the staff to return to the office for the final cycle before the game releases, and all of the staff are kicking off that they have to go back to the office. I'm like, really, really? There is absolutely no world in the development world where you can be as efficient doing your job and as productive and creative and as cooperative as you need to be in the development world, because you need to go hand in hand. Okay, you're an animator, but then the other graphic designer who's doing X, Y, and Z will be wanting to chip in and give you ideas, and this is, you bounce off each other. There is no way you can be as efficient as working in the office as you are at home. In a development world, there is no way, because it needs to be a team thing where you all, okay, I like that. Can you do that instead of this? Now, instead of being right beside you and giving you that talk, you're working from home, so that guy needs to ring you or Teams call you, and then you put it on your Teams call, and then you discuss it that way. That what ends up being a 10, 15, 20-minute Teams call could have been done in 2 minutes if you're in the office.
Yeah, I agree. And besides that, a lot of good work comes from team spirit. It comes from personal relationships. It comes from having connections within the company. And I see that especially with the staff we hired over the last 2 years, they don't have the network in the company anymore, because you're not generating a network when you're sitting at home. You're not.
Nope.
And that's what I meant. Yeah, everybody, almost everybody. There's barely anyone really honest about this, because everybody likes working from home. Of course, I do too. It's cool. Yeah. But at the end of the day, the organization in itself, I just see it in my company. I see it in a lot of other companies that we work closely together. Nobody is as efficient anymore. So, man, if you come back to this whole, the games take so long to make. I don't know what you can do, because I'm not working in one of those companies. I know what I would do if I were a high and upper manager in our organization. But that's the thing. Yeah, whether it's working from home or anything else that we mentioned earlier. Yeah, cut down the development times, bring those down, and suddenly your single player games, AAA games, become a lot more profitable at the end of the day. You don't have to go games as a service. Yeah, that's the whole point where we started. So, yeah. But Dutch, let us move on really quick to 2 other games that got updates this week.
Yeah.
The first is Dragon Age. EA came out and said that they are very confident. Emphasis on very.
Yeah.
Confident on Dragon Age Dreadwolf releasing this year.
Oh. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah. Looks like, and it's I would assume it's probably a holiday
Yeah.
season game, because there's no way they're gonna release that in the summer, and we still have not seen it properly. But
I'm
man,
telling
you're
you,
excited for that?
Boxy, I'm telling you, this year could very well outdo last year in terms of the sheer amount of games and quality games we're gonna have to play.
It's I totally agree. If you think about this game, and we are only at the beginning of March, we had like the amazing Prince of Persia. We had games like Banishers, Helldivers, Pal World already. We're playing Final Fantasy VII, which is super well received. I know it apparently doesn't do as well in terms of sales numbers as the original remake. Nonetheless, it's a critically super well received game, and rightfully so. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Um,
And then we go into, like you say, you've got Stalker coming up, you've got Hellblade and Indie, and now you're saying, obviously, we've got Dragon's Dogma coming up in a matter of weeks.
Yeah.
You had another little indie game that took people by storm called Balatro, which was a card game, which was insane.
Yeah.
Like, I seen everybody trying to play that, and I was like, I don't like card games for starters, but it's obviously doing very well as an indie game.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It does.
in terms of the amount of the sheer volume of games that are coming out and doing
Of
well,
quality
Yeah.
games coming.
Yeah.
That's and we still have a Hollow Knight Silksong coming this year. We have Greedfall 2 in terms of like quality smaller games. But then you add upon that all the AAA games. You have a Call of Duty coming this year, of course, again.
yeah,
Which, by the way, for the first time sounds interesting to me. If the rumors turn out to be true, and the campaign is actually more like Far Cry, you know.
You mean more like Ghost Recon?
I never played Ghost Recon, man.
You need to play Ghost Recon Breakpoint because I think that would be much up your bag because that's Far Cry Ghost Recon. Well, it's Far Cry Call of Duty. Breakpoint, and you'll get that super cheap now. You'll get like the Ultimate Edition for like 10 or something like that. But it's a very good looking game. Open world shooter, either tactical or go in all guns blazing. You can have a team, you can play co-op if you want to. Yeah, and if Call of Duty go down that route, I'll also be much more interested in picking it up.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we're gonna get a great mix of quality games, and with quality games I don't mean AAA. Like Prince of Persia, I gave that game I think a 9.2 or something, because it was phenomenal, and I wouldn't consider that like a AAA game. Yeah, so it doesn't really matter. But I think quality games, in terms of they are simply good games, and the sheer volume this year, I'm with you, and it could be. Yeah, you have Avowed coming.
Stalker 2.
Yeah, Stalker 2 is coming, and now it looks like EA finally is going to release Dragon Age this year. So what do you expect for Dreadwolf, man?
I don't know what to expect from it yet because we haven't seen anything of it. I hope it is the first Dragon Age that'll get me into Dragon Age because I didn't really like the others.
Really?
Yeah.
Even though you like high fantasy?
Yeah.
RPGs?
Yeah.
Interesting. Have you played Inquisition?
Yes.
You have.
Because it was on EA's Pass thing that they had in, and then went into Gamepass. So yeah, I've played that.
Okay. Really, because I know you're not into turn-based games, especially not if you have to walk in turn-based games.
No,
it's not that.
Weird. It is not that. It's the dice throwing aspect of it. I don't like the whole, okay, you've got to throw a dice and you can only move these directions. Like, no, I don't like that. Like, you can only move your character to this position and then the other person takes a go and then you can move your character to this position. Nah. Boo. I want more control.
So, man, what I really want to see from Dreadwolf is, I know the diehard Dragon Age fans will hate me for saying that, but I don't need them to go back to like a turn base. I'm totally cool with like a hack and slash combat system, but what I want them to do is not go full open world. You know, if you go back to the original Dragon Ages, like Origins 1 and 2, and so they were very similar in the way they built the world, like the Mass Effect games, where you have more linear progression and semi-open areas, but at the very end of the day, it's more linear rather than open world. And with Dragon Age Inquisition, they had not a seamless open world, but you could still travel in between all the regions, and they were massive. And I would like to go them down the road of more linear, straightforward, streamlined experiences, and focus again more on making proper story choices.
Yeah.
And influence your outcome that way. I would definitely love to see that. But yeah, Dutch. Another game that got a great showing this week was actually No Rest for the Wicked.
Yes.
Have you seen that? They did a stream,
Yeah.
a preview stream. It's coming to early access next month in April.
Yeah.
On Steam, and I don't think they did not announce a proper release date yet. But what did you think of No Rest for the Wicked? Obviously, Moon Studios, the developers of the Ori games, going action RPG. What do you think, man?
Yeah, as a game, looks absolutely fantastic. Looks very interesting. And I'll definitely be interested on trying it in early access. But I'll see how people take to it first. But yeah, ultimately it does look like a really good game. Beautiful. Looks a lot of fun. Looks very interesting. It sounds like it could end up being some kind. If it's going into early access, then that tells me that there could be some form of, not games as a service elements, but they're going to update it over time, which would kind of go on to the side of games as a service game in an aspect. So we'll see how it turns out. It looks great though so far. It looks great. Yeah, I mean, fingers crossed it does well, but looks fantastic so far.
It does. I mean, from a visual standpoint, obviously Moon Studios, they have a great sense for a unique artistical style. Yeah, so it does look beautiful and gorgeous, just like the Ori games. What I find very interesting is their approach from they have this action RPG with an isometric view, and everybody thinks obviously right away Diablo, like, yeah, but it's more like a Souls game.
Yeah.
I wonder whether it's as challenging and difficult as a Souls game, but it is, not like your standard hack and slash approach. You have to block, you have to dodge, you have to, that kind of thing. And that sounds very, very intriguing. They try to do something different in that genre, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And they have a great atmosphere in that world, and I'm super tempted, honestly, to get it in early access. So I can also play it on the alley. Yeah. No Rest for the Wicked, definitely something I'm really looking forward to. But yeah, Dutch, let us move over to the community questions. Or did you want to add anything to No Rest for the Wicked?
No, I think that's good.
All right. Then let's talk about the community questions, because we got a couple of those this week. Each and every Wednesday, for those who might be new to the show, you can write in, and either on Twitter, on YouTube, you usually put up posts, so you can send us your questions. DSP on Twitter, who has the name here on YouTube, Sin, wrote in via DM. Actually, this one is from last week, but I thought it's a great question, so I wanted to bring it into this week. He says, "Howdy, Boxy. For this week, I shall ask this: with the sheer amount of unexpected news bits that have dropped these last 4 years, would you consider this the most crazy generation in recent history? And do you expect the effects of the developments to be felt for generations to come?"
This has definitely been a turning point in the sector. It's been a massive turning point in the sector. We've saw obviously the changes to the amount of studios under single roofs. We've saw the vast growth in the sector as well. You might have seen a lot of layoffs, but there's also been significant growth this generation in terms of the amount of staff working in the gaming industry and the amount of staff at some of these gaming studios. Significant growth. But again, then on the flip side, you've also seen the madness of potentially significantly shorter generations, changes in the way that the industry is going in terms of the types of games they produce, in terms of how they monetize things, in terms of where they place their games. So yeah, naturally, everything's always a catalyst for where it'll go. Ultimately, a lot of the times in previous generations, you saw companies do things too early, where the industry doesn't want to move on with the rest of it, so that particular company pays the price for being ahead of the time. We saw this with the way that Xbox tried to launch the Xbox One and talk about DRM and things like that, and why it was required. And everybody was like, boo, boo, don't want this, we don't want this, it's not going to happen, blah, 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 blah. And now every company has DRM. Every company implements it all because Microsoft were ahead of the time. Naturally, of course, their focus on TV didn't pan out. However, as an aside to that, now what you see is, although they don't focus on the TV built into the consoles, a lot of them are now working on collaborations with TV based on their programs, on their games.
Yeah.
So the TV things come back around in a different aspect, although they probably didn't see that coming. And then, there is a lot of things that have happened in the past that, if they happened when they happened, the industry would have potentially moved into a different section far earlier than we're at now. But ultimately, if one kickstarts and is successful, the industry moves with it. And this generation, we've saw that there's been a couple of platforms that have been uber successful at certain things, and the industry has opted to move along with that. We saw that with Gamepass when it implemented, in the way that, although people might like or dislike what Gamepass does, you can't argue that it has had a profound effect on the way that the industry has ultimately shaped up. Before Gamepass, you had the EA access, but it really wasn't all that much. And you got games like 6 months after launch, or a year after launch. And then Game Pass comes into effect, and then you've got Ubisoft Plus. And they do get full games day and date, including Ultimate Editions. And you've got PS Plus is completely revamped, so it's got 3 tiers. And you've got the cloud, and now everyone's focusing on cloud because of Game Pass's cloud integration. And although every other company had some form of cloud or some form of streaming previously, now they're all really focusing on providing a cloud experience in some way, shape, or form, whether that be directly streaming your consoles to a handheld platform, or whether it be native cloud streaming of games on a service so that you can play games on the go via the cloud. Either way, companies are moving forward because of a certain company forcing the narrative, and we've seen the opposite effect of what Sony would do when they were forcing the narrative of we need to create these huge AAA games, and these AAA games are setting the industry standard for graphical fidelity and storytelling and X, Y, and Z. And so that's what the industry wanted at that point. So then everybody was trying to focus on creating these huge narrative storytelling games and spending huge amounts of money on that. But ultimately, it boils down to the fact that that isn't a sustainable structure. And so the industry is moving away from that, not entirely, but for the most part, because they need to find a more sustainable way of growing and creating content at the same time. So yeah, it has detrimental effects on where the industry is and is going, and will continue to do that.
And I think that's why his statement isn't that far off. I think it is a crazy generation so far, because so many things already happened during these first 3.5 years now. Yeah. Obviously, the generation launched in a crazy time with the pandemic, and everybody stayed at home, and gaming suddenly spiked because everybody was at home. A lot of people bought gaming systems or invested a lot more money into gaming. Then we had, of course, the global inflation for a while, and things like that factored absolutely into this. But then you look at the industry itself. We have this phase of consolidation, a lot of acquisitions happening. Yeah, obviously the big one, ABK, but there also, if you look at the rest of the industry, what Tencent has bought in recent years and what Sony has bought in recent years, and you see all that stuff happening. And at the same time, you see classic models being or classic ways of how the industry worked for decades being disrupted. Obviously, well, Gamepass isn't a thing of this gen. Gamepass launched well into the last gen, but subscription models became way more important. Yeah, Sony copied it. We have that. We have games now coming more and more to multiple platforms, especially PC. A lot of games that were console exclusives were there. We see the rise of handhelds again, which is also, handhelds were basically dead for many years. It's what it is. And now you see the massive success of a Steam Deck and the Lenovo and the Ellie and so on. You see that happening at the same time, and then a lot of companies coming out and saying, oh well, AAA gaming not sustainable anymore, and all that happened basically within this generation. So yeah, it is a great crazy generation so far. Also, when you look at what we talked earlier, the promises that were made for consoles were simply not fulfilled. And I also feel like, especially with the hardcore community, more and more people are, of course, now think about more of moving over to PC. And while, yes, hardcore gamers like us and everyone who's listening to this podcast, I probably would consider like a more invested gamer, a more hardcore gamer, we're still the minority of gamers out there. Most gamers, obviously, are casuals, but you see those hardcore gamers moving now more and more over to PC. Yeah. So there's a lot of shakeup in the industry, and once this generation is over and we go into the next gen, I think the industry will not be the same anymore
Yeah.
than it has been for decades. Yeah, a lot of things are just shaking or changing. Yeah, the the profitability blah, I can't talk anymore. Profitability of games is different. You know, you have different ways of monetizing models. We move away from exclusives. We go back to different ways to playing games with handhelds and all those things. So yeah, it is a crazy generation. Great question. Waller Weasel sends in and asks, "What's your favorite Xbox hidden gem?"
Is there an Xbox hidden gem?
You could answer this in different ways. Of course, there's a Xbox hidden gem, but you could also say, okay, what's the hidden gem in Game Pass?
But does he mean what, like a game made by Xbox that's a hidden gem? If that's the case, then I would say no, there isn't really a hidden gem because they advertise them all to a point where it's not really hidden. Whereas I think if it was a Game Pass thing, then there's an abundance of hidden gems in Game Pass that I think people haven't played or probably won't play. But no, I think there's an abundance of hidden gems in there that people haven't tried or haven't played, and because there's so many games coming out, it's hard to keep on top of them. It is really hard to keep on top of a lot of games.
It's a little hard to answer this question because I feel like, well, Xbox has not really put out many games over the last couple of years. If you think about it, yeah, the games that they have put out last year, there were no hidden gems.
Yeah.
Because the two main games, yeah, Starfield and Forza, you can't really call those hidden gems.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Redfall, well, that was a fail. Yeah, so definitely not a hidden
the only
gem.
gem out of
And
those really was Hi-Fi, and that wasn't hidden again.
And besides Forza and Starfield, they have only put out Halo and Forza Horizon. It's really not that Xbox has put out a lot of games in this gen so far. Yeah, so can't really talk about those as hidden gems, but you can of course go back to the Xbox One days. I see Thanos in the chat posted Recore, which I would agree that game was definitely underrated. You could also, I don't know whether you would consider, for instance, Psychonauts.
Yeah.
Because yes, in our hardcore bubble, that is of course a well-known game, but overall, it didn't move that many units. You could argue about Hi-Fi Rush.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a hidden gem. So yeah.
I think an upcoming hidden gem would be the 100 Heroes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You could also say Ayuden Chronicles, the last one.
Rising.
Ayuden Chronicles Rising, right? Yeah. There are definitely hidden gems. Yeah. Ninja Squirrel writes in and asks, with the amount of Elder Scrolls Online and Final Fantasy XIV console base, why haven't Disney greenlit and released a Star Wars MMO for current gen consoles? Makes zero sense to me. Well, Disney doesn't make any games anymore. They don't have their own studios.
Yeah.
And with the way how they charge and license out their IPs, and the amount you have to pay, I'm not that surprised. Honestly.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. So I think, and also, yeah, MMOs also became a very difficult genre, because there are less and less people out there who want to invest these hundreds and thousands of hours into one single game.
Yeah.
Dave Ramos writes in and says, given the Xbox partner preview that just transpired, I want to ask you about your dream games. If you were to design your own game, a new IP, what would it be? What genre? A gritty first-person experience? A throwback multiplayer? Allow us to peek into your dream game.
Well, mine's easy because I've been wanting one of these since the last one that was on PC, which was before the Xbox One generation, potentially even before the 360 generation. And that was, and it's not a new IP, but it's one that I'd love to see them revisit, and that's Combat Flight Simulator.
Mm.
Microsoft Combat Flight Sim. I've released 3
Okay.
in total. Number 2 was my favorite. But I have absolutely no idea why they don't return to Combat Flight Simulator. Like, they have the base now of a fantastic flight sim that they can go off on and just add the combat mechanics to it. Add the gunfire, the bomb dropping, the sorties and things like that, and then you can create things around that. I don't see why they couldn't do it. I'd love for them to return to Combat Flight Sim.
Yeah.
That would be my dream, because
Yeah.
I even went as far as to look to see if I could download the old Combat Flight Sims now, and they don't sell them. Then it's not available on Steam or anything, so you can't even. I've got them on physical disc, but modern computers don't have disk drives now, so that's useless.
That's true. So for me, it's difficult. I mean, there are a lot of games I would like to be revitalized. You know, I would love to get a proper Warcraft game again. Warcraft 3 was phenomenal, and it is what now, 25 years or so. But then if he asks about a new IP and what genre it would be in, there are 2 things I would say. The first is, many years ago, we had a genre that basically died off, and that is I don't know what to call that genre actually, like a space fighting, trading RPG kind of game. Like the games I'm talking about is Wing Commander and Privateer. I would love to get a new game
I think
in that
Elite
vein.
Dangerous is the closest you're going to get to that.
Yeah, but it's really not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good game. It's a good game, but it's very different actually.
Yeah.
You know, if you think about like Privateer, you had these. It came on 8 discs because they had these the story all told
Or 8 floppy disks or 8 discs?
with live. Oh no, CDs, 8 CDs. Because they had they filmed like live action cutscenes for everything.
A bit like what
it was.
Command and Conquer used to do.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, it was basically an RPG in space. So you had to, level up your ship and everything, and hunt pirates, do missions. But yet it was still very narrative driven and very similar, like a Wing Commander as well. So and I feel like we don't get that kind of.
Saint Reborn in our chat saying
anymore.
he picked up Wing Commander Collection on GOG over Christmas for $1.50 for 1 and 2. He says is that with Mark Hamill and Malcolm McDowell, right?
Yeah.
I
think so. I don't know whether that was Wing Commander. That wasn't the original Wing Commander. That was Wing Commander 2, I think. But I could be mistaken. It's been a long time, man. But I feel like this genre, we don't have that anymore, and I would love that to come back. And then of course I'm a sucker for great open world RPGs, and I would still love to see a Mandalorian open world RPG, because I feel like this is such a great universe for that genre. Would be such a perfect fit if you would be a Mandalorian, and you go out there, do your missions, upgrade your armor and whatnot. I would love to see that. but mostly the privateer or wing commander thing. That would be absolutely awesome. Great question, though. Great question. So, these B writes in and asks, why does it seem like most or all devs have forgotten the functionality of the analog sticks when it comes to gameplay? The sticks should be used for walk, then trot, then run, sprint, depending on how far the player moves. It's like they totally forgot the foundation that Mario 64 laid for the tech.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, because it used to be, obviously, you just slightly touch the stick and you would walk.
Yeah.
You move it a little bit further and you would jog. You move it all the way to the forward and you would sprint.
Yeah.
And now, of course, you hold it all the way forward. It's just a generic run, or slightly forward and it's a walk, and then hold a different button and it's sprint as well as holding all the way forward.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they've just thought that was a more optimal way to do it these days.
I feel so too. It's like there must be a reason, some sort of studies that probably a lot more people feel more comfortable with that way of doing it. I don't know. I actually never thought about it, honestly, before I read the question.
What I do love the addition of is when developers add in the addition of auto run, where you can just click down the stick once and your character just runs until you click down the stick again. Which, I mean, it takes away all you basically have to do is just focus on turning your character. That is a fantastic addition, especially in giant open world games. So you don't have to hold down the stick like constantly.
Yeah,
that adds an air of sustainability to the controller as well, because it means that you don't have to constantly use the path.
Constantly press.
Yeah.
True that. All right, Dutch. Let us wrap this show up for today.
Yes.
I had a blast. I hope you guys too. I want to say a big thank you to everyone who tuned in here today. Lots of topics we covered. Even though it was a more lighter news week, we touched upon a lot of great topics. So thank you all for tuning in. And Dutch, let everyone know what you've coming up, man.
Yeah, so obviously I'm continuing doing the gameplay stream of Rebirth at the moment. I dropped Alan Wake as soon as Rebirth came out. As much as I was attempting to try and get Alan Wake done beforehand, I just didn't have the time. And of course, we mentioned it before. It's one of those games where you have to be in the mood for it. You really do.
Yeah.
And when you come in from a long slog at work, Alan Wake isn't the game you want to turn on to relax. So that's been put on the back burner for now. And when I've got a bit more time, or if I've got a few days off or something when Rebirth died down, and maybe I've got a couple of weeks between games, then I'll jump back onto it. It's by no means a bad game, because it's a great game. It's fantastic. The soundtrack's fantastic. The gameplay is fantastic. Story's great. Yeah, Rebirth is what I'm focusing on at the moment. So that's the game I'm playing. Other than that, just working on in the background when I'm not streaming, and I'm not doing my model making, working on the indie showcase, and that's me. So if it's not working on the indie showcase or streaming Final Fantasy, it's doing the podcast every Thursday for the time being with yourself.
Sweet. All right. So yeah, we will be back, of course, next week with a brand new episode of the World of Gaming. Also, probably going to be co-streamed again on the World of Mix-Up. I wanted to.
The World of Mix-Up.
The World of Mix-Up.
The midweek World of Gaming Mix-Up.
It's something like that. But yeah, I'll be playing a lot of Final Fantasy over the weekend, hopefully. And also will hopefully go back a little bit to Starfield on the Alley, because it runs so beautiful at 60 now. And play also a little bit more Stalker. So, but yeah, guys, again, thanks for tuning in. I do hope you're gonna have an awesome week ahead, and we see you back next Thursday. And until then, enjoy your gaming. Have fun out there on the Twitter streets or wherever you are and discussing gaming. And of course, more importantly, have a great week overall. And don't forget to game on.